In this video, I want to talk about how we identify a translation within an equation. So let's say we've got y equals some function of x. Now that f of x could be any function you like. It could be y equals x squared. It could be y equals sine of x. It could be y equals 1 over x squared. Okay, so it could be anything you like. This arrow here, where we have essentially a little base for it, and it comes out like so, this means maps to, essentially. So y equals f of x is being mapped to, and we use this word of mapping to mean it's been transformed to this other equation. And with a translation, you are looking out for additions or subtractions, okay? So what you will find is that when it's in this function notation, either the addition or subtraction will have occurred within the bracket. So what that means is we're going to be subtracting or adding something to x. Now, in general, we will write that down as take away a, for example. Now, rather than add a. I'll explain why in a moment. So we'll have subtract a inside, so we're adding or subtracting something inside the bracket. And then we will be adding or subtracting something outside of the bracket. Now, they're not both necessarily going to be there, but we're going to write that as plus b. So it looks like at the moment that I am subtracting something from the inside and I'm adding something on the outside. But the a or the b could be negative, right? They could be positive, they could be negative. So if a was negative, we would have take away a negative. And so you would have a plus, okay? And here we could have plus a negative, and so you'd be subtracting, okay? So what this represents, this mapping, we refer to this as a translation. A translation means that you are just picking up the graph and moving it somewhere else and plonking it down. Okay? That's all a translation means. You're not stretching it, you're not stretching it that direction, you're not rotating it, you're not making it any larger or anything like that, or reflecting it. We're just picking it up and moving it somewhere else. And we describe a translation using a vector. So we say a translation by the vector AB. Now, there's a couple of things to unpack here, right? So if you haven't looked at vectors yet, or you're not quite sure what a vector means, essentially, it is an instruction of how you get from the one point to another. Okay? So what this is telling you is to go A along the horizontal axis and then B up the vertical axis. Okay? So A could be negative, which means you want to go back along the positive axis, and then B could be negative, which means you're going down the vertical axis. Okay, so examples. 2, 1 would mean that we are going 2 along and then 1 up. And so your direction would be pointing 2 along, 1 up in this diagonal direction. And that would be a vector. So essentially it's like a line with a direction. Or we could have maybe -3, -1. And because it's -3, we are going to be starting from here and we're going to be going backwards 3 units and then down 1 unit. And so the direction of travel would be in that direction. So this was 2 along, 1 up. This is 3 back, 1 down. Okay? So this is what we mean by this vector. Now, I said that there were a couple of things to unpack there. So one thing is to make sure you understand what I mean by a vector. And the second thing is the reason as to why we've got a minus there and a plus there. Now, the easiest thing to connect this with, right, to make a connection with, is completing the square. So if you have met completing the square by this point, we've certainly done it in the videos so far, then when you complete the square of a quadratic, the number inside the bracket changes sign. The one outside stays the same. And this is precisely the same thing that you're seeing here. Okay? So when you have this translation, the one that is inside the bracket affects the horizontal direction. Okay? So if it's inside, it affects the horizontal direction, and it is the opposite to what you expect. So, example. Okay, so let's say we've got y equals f of x is being mapped to y equals f of x plus 3 take away 2. The plus 3 inside the bracket is telling me it's travelling horizontally, okay, because it's inside the bracket. And it's always the opposite to what you expect. So this is telling me that I'm moving 3 units to, well, your left, okay, my right. So I'll be doing 3 units this way. The takeaway 2 on the outside, the B, this affects the vertical direction. So this is horizontal. This is vertical. Okay. Well, let's just highlight just the -8 there. Okay. So horizontal and vertical. And the vertical is as you expect. So -2 means we are going down 2 units. So this is 3 units to the left, 2 units downwards. So we would refer to that as a translation by the vector -3, one inside changes sign, one outside stays the same, -2. Okay? And so this is how we identify a translation from function notation, and we're going to be practicing this in the coming videos.